Alright, so this is the verse for today, 428:31. Ekaikashyabhavat tesham rajan arbudam arbudam bhokshyate yadvamshadharer mahi manvantaram param. Translation. My dear King Prachini, the sons of Malyadvaj gave birth to many thousands and thousands of sons, and all of them have been protecting the entire world up to the end of one Manu's lifespan and even afterward. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma. A Manvantar, the lifespan of one Brahma, is given as 71 multiplied by 4.32 million years. After one such Manu passes on, another Manu begins his lifespan. In this way, the life cycle of the universe is going on. As one Manu follows another, the cult of Krishna consciousness is being imparted, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.1. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Imam Vivashvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivashvan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakve Bravait. The blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivashvan, and Vivashvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Vivashvan, the sun god, imparted Bhagavad Gita to one Manu, and this Manu imparted it to his son, who imparted it to yet another Manu. In this way, the propagation of Krishna consciousness is never stopped. No one should think that this Krishna consciousness movement is a new movement. As confirmed by Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it is a very, very old movement, for it has been passing down from one Manu to another. Among Vaishnavas, there may be some difference of opinion due to everyone's personal identity. But despite all personal differences, the cult of Krishna consciousness must go on. We can see that under the instructions of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj began preaching the Krishna consciousness movement in an organized way within the past 100 years. The disciples of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj are all God brothers, and although there are some differences of opinion, and although we are not acting conjointly, every one of us is spreading this Krishna consciousness movement according to his own capacity and producing many disciples to spread it all over the world. As far as we are concerned, we have already started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and many thousands of Europeans and Americans have joined this movement. Indeed, it is spreading like wildfire. The cult of Krishna consciousness, based on the 9 principles of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam, will never be stopped. It will go on without distinction of caste, creed, color, or country. No one can check it. The word bhokshyate is very important in this verse. Just as a king gives protection to his citizens, these devotees, following the principles of devotional service, will give protection to all the people of the world. The people of the world are very much harassed by so-called religious principled swamis, yogis, karmis, and gyanis, but none of these can show the right way to become elevated to the spiritual platform. There are primarily 4 parties spreading devotional service all over the universe. These are the Ramanuja Sampradaya, the Madhva Sampradaya, the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, and the Nimbarka Sampradaya. The Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya in particular comes from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All these devotees are spreading this Krishna consciousness movement very widely and giving protection to innocent people who are being so much embarrassed by pseudo avatars, swamis, yogis, and others. So I will try to explain something from this purport by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada talks in the purport initially about the cycle of creation and destruction. So we know that how the creation begins. When Mahavishnu, he breathes out from his body pores, multiple universes are created. And in each of these universes, Garbhodaksha Vishnu enters, and from his navel, a lotus flower grows, and on the lotus flower, Brahma is born. And Brahma is known as Swayambhu, because Prabhupada says that he was born out of the abdomen of the father, not from the mother. So he's known as Swayambhu. And this picture talks about the life of Brahma. So one day of Brahma equates to 311 trillion years, earthly years. And equal is the length of his night. And Brahma stays for his 100 years. And in one day of Brahma, we have 14 Manus. And or we can say 14 Manvantaras. And one Manvantara has 71 Divya Yugs cycles. And in one Divya Yug cycle, there are four parts. There is Satya Yug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, and Kali Yug. And Kali Yug, it lasts for 432,000 years. And Dwapar Yug lasts for double that, 864,000. And Treta Yug is triple the length of Kali Yug, and Satya Yug is 4 times the length of Kali Yug. And currently we are in the 28th Divya Yug, in the 7th Manvantara, which is ruled by the Vaivashvata Manu. So just having this picture in mind, so what happens is when Brahma sleeps at night, there is a partial destruction that happens, and when Brahma dies at the end of his 100 years, there is a complete destruction that happens of all the material universes, and all the universes again go back into Mahavishnu. And this cycle of creation and destruction repeats again and again. So although we hear that this Brahma's life is 311 trillion years, Prabhupada writes in one purport, from the viewpoint of eternity, Brahma's life is like a lightning flash. And what to talk about our life from Brahma's perspective? It's like a blink of an eye. With the blink of an eye of Brahma, we are born and we die. So, but by a great fortune, we have received this human form of life. Like we have 8.4 million different species in this material world. And Prabhupada quotes this verse from Padma Puran: Jalaja Nava Lakhani Sthavar Lakha Vimshati Krimyo Rudra Sankheka Pakshinam Dakha Lakshanam Trinchal Lakhani Pashva Chatur Lakhani Manava. So here Prabhupada talks about the different 8.4 million species, and he says that this verse says that there are 900,000 species living in water. There are 2 million species that are trees and plants. 1.1 million species are insects and reptiles. 1 million species are birds. 3 million species are quadrupeds. And there are 400,000 different human species. These are different in terms of their consciousness. So we, as spirit souls, we are traveling through all these different species, and we have been a tree and a bird and a fish and a rat and whatnot in our so many past lives that we have had. And finally, we have come to this human form of life. So first we need to understand, and as we read the purports in Srimad Bhagavatam and read Srimad Bhagavatam, we need to understand that how rare it is to get this human birth that we have gotten. And Prahlad Maharaj has this very famous verse: Kaumara acharit pragya dharman bhagavatan iha durlabham manusham janma tad api adhruvam arthadam. So here Prahlad Maharaj is saying that one who is intelligent should use this human form of life from very beginning, from the tender age of childhood, to practice these 9 processes of devotional service that Prabhupada talked about in the purport. We need to practice them from the very beginning of our life. Why? Because this human body, he talks about 3 things, 3 aspects of the human body. It is durlabham, means it is very rarely attained. And it is adhruvam, it is temporary, it lasts only for a very short time. And arthadam, it is very valuable. So these are the 3 aspects of the human life. It is durlabham, adhruvam, and arthadam. So how many of us think that, oh, we are so fortunate that we have attained this human body in this life? So because we are in this body for a very short time, we should understand that we cannot afford to waste even a single moment. As Chanakya Pandit says, Ayushya Shana Ekopi na labhe swarna kotibihi na chainirarthakam niti kacha hanistatadika. So he says that even one moment of life spent uselessly cannot be, uh, there cannot be a greater loss than the time spent uselessly, because one moment of life spent uselessly cannot be regained by millions of gold coins. So he says that. So we should understand how fortunate we are to receive this human body. And on top of that, we have received this knowledge of Krishna consciousness through the mercy of the devotees, Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Srimad Bhagavatam, it has this nice verse. It says that coming across a devotee in one's lifetime is even more rare than getting a human birth. So, Durlabho Manusho Deho Dehinam Shana Bhangura Tatrapi Durlabham Manne Vaikuntha Priya Darshanam. That human body is most difficult to achieve and can be lost at any moment, but even those who have achieved this human form, they rarely get the opportunity to get the association of pure devotees. And even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about how rare it is to find a devotee. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaschid mameti tatvataha. Out of thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. So, human population is rare, and how many there are devotees in this human population? Like there are 7 billion people in this on this earth, and hardly a few percent of them are Vaishnavas. They're devotees. So our biggest loss is when we come across a Vaishnava, we do not take advantage of their association. And Prabhupada talks about that the association with the Vaishnavas, it is of two types. There is Vani association and Vapu association. Vani means that we hear from the devotees, we hear attentively from the devotees, and we act according to their instructions. And Vapu means we serve the devotees physically. And out of this Vani and Vapu, Prabhupada says a Vani association is more important. So in the purport we read today, Prabhupada, he quotes this verse from Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara praptam. Imam Vishwate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam. And Krishna is talking about the disciplic succession, how he imparted the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita first to the sun god Vivashwan, and then Vivashwan instructed it to Manu, and Manu instructed it to Ikshvaku. And then in the next verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Evam parampara prapte me mam rajasya vidu sa kalane hamata yogo nashta parantapa. And Krishna is saying that in due course of time, this disciplic succession was lost. So now Krishna is trying to uh, rebuild this disciplic succession by again imparting this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And then in the next verse, Krishna talks about why he's imparting this knowledge to Arjuna. What is his qualification? And Bhagavad Gita, verse 4.3, it says, Sa evayam mayate adya yogo prokta puratana bhakto simi sakha cheti rahasyam he etad uttamam. That Krishna is saying that I am imparting this knowledge to you because you are my friend, and you are my devotee. So these two things that he says, these are Arjuna's qualification. You are my devotee and you are my friend. So the same instructions that were given to Arjuna by Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, we have the same instructions with us today by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the devotees. And what should happen when we read Bhagavad Gita? The same impact the Bhagavad Gita had on Arjuna, the same impact it should have on us. That ultimately Arjuna surrendered to Krishna, and we should do the same. Like when we read Bhagavad Gita, our life should be changed in such a way that we take up Krishna consciousness very seriously. We should be in a grateful mood. We should be indebted to Srila Prabhupada, and in this mood of gratitude, we should practice Krishna consciousness, following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. And we should be grateful to Krishna, that Krishna, he is so kind that time and time again he has sent these devotees in our life, these scriptures in our life. Although we have forgotten him, but the Lord has not forgotten us, because he is a loving father. He can never forget us. And Krishna says that why we came to this material world in Bhagavad Gita, Ichha Dvesha Samuthena Bandva Mohina Bharata Sarva Bhutani Samoham Sarge Yanti Parantapa. So Krishna is saying um, that we came to this material world because of our envy towards Krishna. So Krishna has given us this little independence and free will. And why he has given us this free will? Because that's the nature of love. You cannot force someone to love you, and Krishna wants us to love him out of our free will. So each one of us has a free will, but we have misused our free will. We have become envious of Krishna, and we wanted to enjoy separately from Krishna. And that's why we chose to leave the spiritual world, and we have come to this material world. And this material world, Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita as Dukhalyam Ashashvatam, Anityam Asukham Lokam. It is a temporary world full of miseries. So, like how it's like how someone in this material world, when he breaks the law of the government, he's put into a jail and a prison house. The same way we have been put into this jail of the material world. And what is our biggest problem? Our biggest problem is that we are not trying to get out of this jail. We are happy being in this jail. And that's why Yudhishthir Maharaj, when he was asked, what is the most wonderful thing in this world? When Yamraj asked him that question, Yudhishthir Maharaj said, Ahani ahani bhutani gacchantaya yamalayam shesha sthavaram icchanti kim ascharyam athaparam. That it is our desire to remain in this prison is a most surprising thing that Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying, that no one is preparing for death. No one is preparing for their next life, where they would go next. And hundreds and thousands of people are dying every day, but the person thinks that he will never die. So nobody wants to escape this prison, and we want to build a beautiful house in this prison. We want a nice job in this prison. We want to go to movies. We want to watch TV and play sports in this prison. And it's such a brilliant prison that Durga Devi has made. And she has made a prison for which no locks and no security system is required, because nobody wants to get out of this prison. Prisoners, they love to be in this prison. So one class, Gokuleshwar Prabhu, I was remembering, he was saying that a prisoner in a jail, he's writing a letter to the president. And he's writing in his letter, Sir, I do not like the walls of my prison. You should get them painted. I don't like, my bed is not comfortable. It would be nice if I had this or that in the prison cell. Wouldn't be this prisoner be considered very foolish? He's planning to stay in the prison very comfortably. And so basically, this prisoner, he should be writing a letter to the president to ask for forgiveness, so that his term is reduced and he can be released from this prison. So same thing for us. Instead of preparing to live in this material world comfortably and trying to get this or that for our pleasure, making plans to make our situations better, we should spend all our energy and our effort without wasting even a single moment to get out of this prison of the material world. So that's why Krishna, he's sending devotees in our life, and he's sending these scriptures, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, to awaken us to the reality. So in Canto 4, in the Prithu Maharaj pastime, there is a nice verse. Prithu Maharaj is saying, Sa uttam shloka mahan mukhachuto bhavat padambhuja sudha kanani laha smritim punar vismrita tattva vartmanam kuyogi nam no vitarate alamvare. So Prithu Maharaj is saying that, my dear Lord, You are known as Uttam Shloka. You are glorified by selected verses uttered by great personalities. And such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. And when the transcendental vibration from the mouths of the great devotees, it carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, then the forgetful living entity, he gradually remembers this eternal relationship with you. And devotees, they finally come to the right conclusion about the value of life. So then he's asking for a benediction. Then, my dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. So that should be our prayer to the Lord, that Lord, let us always hear from the mouth of the pure devotee, so that we reawaken and we wake up from this dreaming state that we are in. We are awoken and we remember our sambandh, our eternal relationship with Krishna, that we are Jivara Swarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas, that we are eternal servants of Krishna. So then in the purport, Prabhupada talks about the disciplic succession. And see, this disciplic succession is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Our disciplic succession for the Madhva, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita's introduction at the end. So our Sampradaya is starting from Krishna imparting the knowledge to Brahma. Tene Brahma Nridaya, he imparted the knowledge in the heart of Brahma, and from Brahma it went to Narad, to Vyas, to Madhva, and finally going down it went to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to the six Goswamis, and then to Jagannath Das Babaji, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and finally to our Srila Prabhupada. So I was remembering this as we were talking about this disciplic succession. I was reading in Lilamrit. It was mentioned that how Srila Prabhupada met Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and how his mind got convinced that he should dedicate his life to Krishna consciousness. So it is described in Lilamrit how when Srila Prabhupada, his name was Abhay Charan, when he was 24 years old, he was participating in Gandhi's non-violence independence movement at that time. And one of his friends, his name was Naren, he insisted Abhay Charan to join him to meet a sadhu, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who had come from Mayapur to Kolkata. And at that time, Prabhupada, he was very skeptical about the sadhus, as he had seen many sadhus in his childhood who used to visit his father's house, but they were not good in their character. So Prabhupada actually had lost faith in anyone who wore saffron robes, it is mentioned. But his friend Naren, he persisted that Prabhupada, he should see this sadhu because he is different. So he kind of dragged Srila Prabhupada to meet Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Prabhupada, when he saw Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he offered his obeisances. And before he could rise his head up, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he looked at Prabhupada and he said, "You are an educated young man. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message throughout the whole world?" So Prabhupada, he was taken aback. And Prabhupada, he was thinking, I don't even know this sadhu, and he's already giving me an instruction. So Prabhupada, he was at that time, he was involved in this Gandhi's movement, trying to get the British out of India. So he responded to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that who will hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message? We are a dependent country right now. Right now, we need to become independent. And how can we spread this Krishna consciousness if we are under a British rule? So then I want to read one section of Lilamrit, the response that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had to this question of Prabhupada. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati replied in a quite deep voice that Krishna consciousness didn't have to wait for a change in Indian politics, nor was it dependent on who ruled. Krishna consciousness was so important, so exclusively important that it could not wait. Abhay was struck by his boldness. How could he say such a thing? The whole world of India beyond this little Ulta Danga rooftop So Ulta Danga place is where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur first met Srila Prabhupada. Ulta Danga rooftop was in turmoil. So the whole world except this Ulta Danga rooftop was in turmoil and seemed to support what Abhay had said. Many famous leaders of Bengal, many saints, even Gandhi himself, men who were educated and spiritually minded, all might very well have asked the same question, challenging this sadhu's relevancy. And yet he was dismissing everything and everyone as if were of no consequence. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati continued, whether one power or another ruled was a temporary situation, but the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness, and the real self is the spirit soul. No man-made political system, therefore, could actually help humanity. This was a verdict of Vedic scriptures and the line of spiritual masters. Although everyone is an eternal servant of God, when one takes himself to be the temporary body and regards the nation of his body as worshipable, he comes under illusion. The leaders and followers of the world's political movements, including the movement for Swaraj, were simply cultivating this illusion. Real welfare work, whether individual, social, or political, should help prepare a person for his next life and help him establish his eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he made it clear to Prabhupada that the most urgent need of the hour is to become Krishna consciousness and is to become Krishna conscious and spread Krishna consciousness, and that's the greatest welfare work. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bharat Bhumi te hoelo manushya janmaya janma sarthak kari karo paropkar. That one who is born in the land of India should make his life successful and then work for the benefit of others, spreading Krishna consciousness. And he also said to Kurma Brahman, Yare dekho tare kaho Krishna upadesh, amar agya guru hai tara desh. That instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna as they were given in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And this way you become a spiritual master and you try to liberate everyone in this land. So there will always be some or the other material problem going on in our life, and that's why this material world is called the Khalyam Shashvatam. And you might say that first let's get this problem resolved and then I will take up Krishna consciousness seriously. But that's an illusion of Maya, because something or other will always be there. Things will not get better. Materially, things will get worse in Kali Yuga. As the Kali Yuga progresses, things will get worse. So, but if you really understand that we are not this temporary body, but we are spirit soul, which is trapped in this temporary body, and this temporary body which gives only miseries, and that there is no enjoyment in this material world. If we understand that, we are convinced about that, then we can take up Krishna consciousness seriously. And Prabhupada gives this example of a fish out of water. So he says that we are like fish out of water. So fish, if it gets out of water, you give the fish anything. Like you give it nice bed to sleep, you give it nice food stuff to eat. But fish cannot be happy with any of these things. Fish can be happy by only by going into the water, because fish is the animal of the water. So in the same way, we can be happy only if we go back to Krishna, to the spiritual world. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We are a spiritual entity. We're not a material entity, and that's why we cannot be happy in the material world. So we have to be convinced about that. And Prahlad Maharaj says this nice verse in 7th canto. Kutra shisha shruti shukha mrikta shnirupa kvedam kalevram ashesha rujam viroha nirvidyate natu janu yadapati vidvan kamanalam madhulave shamyandurapahe. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying that this material world, every living entity is desiring some future happiness. And this future happiness is like a mirage in the desert. There is no water in the desert. In the same way, there is no happiness in this material world, and this body is merely a source of various diseases. So, so Srila Prabhupada, he was very impressed with his first meeting with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and that when he was asked what he thought about that meeting, Prabhupada mentioned that he was convinced that the message of Lord Chaitanya was in the hands of an expert person. And Prabhupada also said that I was very satisfied to be defeated by my spiritual master. So then, in the second meeting of Prabhupada with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it is said that it was during Vraj Mandal Parikrama. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was in Koshi, and it was advertised, and Prabhupada was there visiting for a few days, and it was advertised that there's going to be a lecture by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and at the same time there is going to be a parikrama of the holy place called Shesha Shai. So most of the devotees, it is mentioned that they went to do this parikrama. Um, but Srila Prabhupada, he was thinking that, it's mentioned in Lilamrit, he was thinking that what will I learn by doing the parikrama? All the holy places are at the lotus feet of my Gurudev. So what Prabhupada did, he sat down and heard Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is very enthusiastic speaker, and he spoke for many hours, and many people left, and only few disciples were left. All of them were sannyasis except for Srila Prabhupada, who was a grihastha at that time. So, and then, next day, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he left, and it's mentioned that when Srila Prabhupada's name was recommended by his guru, god brothers, for initiation, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur immediately approved it. Why? Because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was remembering how Srila Prabhupada had so much keen interest in hearing, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that I have noted that this young man, he likes to hear, he does not go away. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gave first and second initiation to Prabhupada at the same time, because he remembered the keen interest that Prabhupada showed in hearing from his spiritual master. So Prabhupada, he is teaching us that when we hear Harikatha, we should hear with submissive oral reception. So Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadrikshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. That we should hear submissively from the spiritual master. And they can impart knowledge onto you because they have seen the truth. So we should hear with rapt attention from the devotees. And in one purport, Prabhupada writes that who can see Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam? So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in one purport, Prabhupada writes, one has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukdev Goswami and no one else, if one at all wants to see Lord Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. And then the secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned. Who can give rapt attention to the message of Bhagavatam? One who is pure in mind. And who is pure in mind? One who is pure in action. And who is pure in action? One who is pure in his eating, sleeping, faring, and mating. So we need to follow the four regulative principles properly. And that would purify our mind, and then we will be able to hear the message of Bhagavatam with rapt attention. And then there would be a major change in our life in just hearing even one katha from Srimad Bhagavatam. So like Gokuleshwar Prabhu, that he was saying yesterday, this example, like for conception to take place, the male should be potent and the female should be fertile. So in the same way, the transmission of transcendental knowledge to take place, the speaker must be bona fide and the audience must be sincere and eager. So we should learn from the example that we mentioned about how Prabhupada, he was so eager and so sincere in hearing from his spiritual master. So in the purport that we read today, Prabhupada, he talks about the difference of opinion among preachers, that there's sometimes difference of opinion among the preachers, but then still they should continue to preach the message of Bhagavatam, message of Krishna consciousness throughout the world. And if everyone keeps Krishna in the center and acts only for the pleasure of Krishna, then there should not be any conflicts. But if people, they have their own agenda and they have material desires, Kanak Kamini Pratishtha. Kanak means wealth, Kamini means woman, and Pratishtha means fame, or adoration. If we have these material desires, then there will be conflicts with other devotees. Like I was reading in Leilamrit, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was facing some challenges in his Gaudiya Math, um, and the devotees were quarreling. So I would like to read some small section from that place. So Prabhupada, he used to visit Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and there's only few meetings that he had with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And in one of those meetings, Bhakti Siddhanta, he confided very confidentially to our Srila Prabhupada, and he was saying there had been some quarreling amongst his leading disciples in Calcutta, he said, and this distressed him very much. Even now in Vrindavan, it weighed heavily on his mind. Some of his disciples had been fighting over who would use various rooms and facilities at the Gaudiya Math headquarters in Calcutta. So somebody had donated like a big temple, a big marble temple to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and now the devotees were quarreling which room they want to take in that temple. I like this room, and this is my room, and that's not your room. So they were fighting over rooms and facilities in the Gaudiya Math. So these devotees were all members of the same mutt, and the building was for propagating Krishna consciousness under the leadership of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Yet, even in their spiritual master's presence, they were quarreling. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas were supposed to be free from envy of any creature. What to speak of envy of one another? If they were to fight now, what would they do after their spiritual master passed away? Abhay had no part in these matters and did not even know the details of who was involved. But as he listened to his spiritual master, he also became distressed. Deeply concerned, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta said to Abhay, Agu Jwalbe, there will be fire. One day there would be fire in the Calcutta Gaudiya Math, and that fire of party interests would spread and destroy. Abhay heard but did not know what to make of it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had fought so long and boldly to establish that anyone of any birth could be elevated to become a Brahmana, a sannyasi, or a Vaishnava. But if his followers became contaminated by little wealth and the desire for prestige, thereby showing themselves to be still low class men despite their training in purification, then his mission would be disrupted. If in the name of religion they become attached to ease, position, and prestige, it could only mean that they had failed to grasp the teachings of their spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada said that he was lamenting that these men are simply after the stones and bricks of the building he condemned. He was very, very sorry. When we were living in a rented house, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, if we could collect 200 or 300 rupees, we were living very nicely at Ulta Danga. We were happier then. But since we have been given this marble palace in Bagh Bazaar, there is friction between our men. Who will occupy this room? Who will occupy that room? Who will be the proprietor of this room? Everyone is planning in different ways. It would be better to take the marble from the walls and secure money. If I could do this and print books, that would be better. So Abhay felt his spiritual master speaking to him in urgency, as if asking him for help or warning him to avert a disaster. But what could he do? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta then said directly to Abhay, Amar ichha chila kichu by kar karana. I have a desire to print some books. If you ever get money, print books. Standing by Radhakund and beholding his spiritual master, Abhay felt the words deeply enter into his own life. If you ever get money, print books. So we can see from this pastime here how Maya gives us cheap things and it allures us away from the greatest wealth of Krishna Prem. So Maya in the form of Kanak, Kamini and Pratishtha is so strong that even if you are with a pure devotee, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, or if even if you are with the Supreme Lord, you can get distracted. Like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is example of Kal Krishna Das, who was with the Supreme Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he got allured by women in a tribal Bhattadhari's group, and he left Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's association. So we should be very careful of Maya, how it can distract us from this goal of human life. And the service that we do for Krishna, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, should be in this mood as na dhanam na janam ना सुंदरिम कविताम व जगदीश कमाई mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhakti rahe tu kit pai. Which then Mahaprabhu is praying that I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I want beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I don't want to be recognized as a very learned person. I don't want any of this. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. So that should be our mood when we do service for Krishna and for Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada, he was remembering the instructions of his guru that whenever you get money, you print books. And what happened after Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's demise? There were these tensions between the God brothers in the Gaudiya Math, and actually the Gaudiya Math, it broke apart into several different small mutts. Um, but this entire event, it was a learning experience for our Srila Prabhupada, and he learned from this incident. And when he was creating ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, he carefully established a GBC, Governing Body Commission, consisting of a group of sannyasis to lead ISKCON, so that after he departs from this material world, there is a good succession plan to make sure that ISKCON continues strong after his departure. So before departing Srila Prabhupada, he had opened 108 temples, and the number of temples have enormously increased all over the world after he has left. Thanks for this far-sighted thinking of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada always stressed on devotees cooperating with each other. So at one time, I was hearing one pastime, some devotees were asking Srila Prabhupada, what is your favorite department? So the Gurukul teacher was saying the Gurukul department is the favorite department of Prabhupada, and book distributors were saying that is a book distribution. Sankirtan group is the best department, or some others were saying that people taking care of cows is a favorite department. But Prabhupada, he answered, what is his favorite department? He said that the department which cooperates with one another, keeping Guru and Krishna in the center, that is my favorite department. So Prabhupada, he stressed on this cooperation, and Prabhupada, he also said, your love for me will be shown how much you cooperate with each other after I am gone. And in one of the purports, nice purport, Prabhupada writes that in the service of the Lord, everyone should be friendly with each other. In the service of the Lord, they should praise each other, and should not become proud of their own service. And this is the Vaishnav thinking and Vaikuntha thinking, because in Vaikuntha planets, everybody appreciates one another's service. There is Vaikuntha competition, is who can please. The Vaikuntha competition is who is the best servant of the servant of the devotees. So everybody is trying to please Krishna. So that should be our mood. Then when we, and with that mood, that whenever we have an interaction with another devotee, we should always think that how can I bring out the best in that devotee? How can I take this person closer to Krishna? That should be our mood with every interaction that we have with another person. How can I make this person closer to Krishna? So we should encourage one another, we should appreciate one another, and we should collectively work together and help Srila Prabhupada to spread this Krishna consciousness movement. We should not try to pull each other down or establish superiority over the other, or prove ourselves better and find faults in others or discourage them. That is very sorry state if we do that. So we should be humble and we should be tolerant. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, who can chant the holy name continuously for 24 hours a day? One who is in this consciousness of Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarur Api Sahishnuna, Manina Manatena Kirtanaya Sadahari. We should be as humble as a straw in the street. We should be as tolerant as a tree. We should give all respects to others, and we should not desire any respect from others. And in this mood, we can chant the holy name of Krishna continuously. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that this verse is is so important that you should string this verse on a thread and wear it on your neck for continuous remembrance. So, I was reading this book by Giriraj Swami, I'll Build You a Temple. And I was reading in this book how Giriraj Swami, who is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, when he was given this charge of leading the management and construction of ISKCON Juhu temple, he handled conflicts, how he handled the conflicts with other devotees. I want to read one instance um, so we can learn from Giriraj Swami how to deal with conflicts. So I will read. To provide flowers for the deities, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to cultivate a garden. He wrote me, "You can have the gardeners decorate the whole land with flowers, and if possible, some fruits also. Have a boundary fence so that everyone can enter it." And a week later, he added that he wanted Nar Narayan to take charge of the gardening. Sometimes he may be difficult to live with, he acknowledged. So Prabhupada is talking about this devotee Nar Narayan, and he's writing in his letter to Giriraj Swami that sometimes we know that Nar Narayan, he is difficult to live with. But Giriraj Maharaj, you are a good manager. And a good manager means that he's able to satisfy everyone and live in a cooperative manner with all the devotees. So if you manage things nicely, he can do tremendous work. Practically, no one has more energy than Vishwakarma, the demigod architect and the master builder, after whom he had nicknamed Narnarayan, devotee, the devotee named Narnarayan. So Giriraj Swami is writing, when I wrote Prabhupada that the Rose King of India had offered us 1,000 rose plants for free, he replied, utilize them nicely. There will be flowers for the deities. It will be a great service. Nar Narayan engaged up to a dozen laborers daily and directed them in laying beds of manure and red soil and planting rose bushes, champak, jasmine, and kadamba trees and various other flowers. So he's doing a great service. He's planting all these flowers that would be offered to Krishna, and that's devotional service. He and Dravida planted a small forest of tulsi, and winding from shrub to shrub was an inlaid brick pathway with benches on which devotees could sit and chant japa. I later reported to Prabhupada that Narayan had planted bushes, creepers, and flowers in a wonderfully attractive array of flower beds, bushes, and paths. In addition, he put up fence posts all around the garden, cleared wild brush from various places, and put up necessary walls and fences. So again, Prabhupada instructed me, please give him all facilities so he can make a good garden on all the vacant land on our property. In time, however, the difficulty of dealing with Narayan did lead to a conflict. So, because this devotee was very difficult to deal with, there were conflicts with this devotee. So, Giriraj Maharaj is saying, I was in the hut one day with Jagat Purusha and Raghunath when Nar Narayan approached me for funds to make purchases for the garden. The temple was financially strapped. So, they had very small finances. It was very difficult to manage the temple, so the finances were strapped. I told him, and there weren't funds available at that time. But Nar Narayan would not accept my response. Prabhupada had personally given him the service of creating a beautiful garden, he argued, and he needed money to carry out this service. So he became angry and accused me of obstructing him from carrying out his service to Prabhupada. So Nar Narayan, he was asking for money to do the service that Prabhupada had told him to do, but Giriraj Maharaj, he did not have money. And now Nar Narayan, he was accusing Giriraj Maharaj that he was obstructing his service. So I tried to explain that there was nothing I could do until funds were available. But while my peaceful demeanor lessened the chance of Narayan becoming physically violent, it also increased his frustration, his anger spinning out of control, turned to rage. He seemed like he wanted to rip me apart, and he reared back and spat in my face. So this devotee, he spit on Giriraj Maharaj's face. He was that frustrated. So, in response, I simply wiped myself off and started chanting the Maha Mantra as loudly as I could. So, we can see the exceptional response by Giriraj Swami. He started chanting Maha Mantra. Raghunath, and this is Raghunath is actually Lokanath Swami. Loknath Swami Maharaj, who was a humble and sensitive by nature, was so shocked to see this kind of a hostile, aggressive behavior from a devotee that he fainted on the floor. So Loknath Swami, he was seeing this argument between the two devotees, Narnarayan and Giriraj Swami, and he fainted on the floor, seeing this hostile, aggressive behavior because it's not expected of a devotee. At which point Jagat Purusha and I rushed over to revive and pacify him. Narnarayan was still fuming, but the tension in the room had eased, the atmosphere transformed by our concern for an innocent witness, and I bore no grudge against him. So here is again we're seeing Giriraj Swami. He's saying that I bore no grudge against Narnarayan. I knew that he was intent on his service to Srila Prabhupada and that he was dear to Prabhupada and Prabhupada was dear to him. So I really like this exceptional response by Giriraj Swami, how he was so tolerant to this devotee that even if he spat on him, Giriraj Swami, he understood the heart of the devotee. He understood that this devotee was frustrated because he was not able to perform his service. And Giriraj Swami, he kept Srila Prabhupada and Krishna foremost and not his false ego. And Prabhupada, he was very happy with how Giriraj Swami was leading the ISKCON Juhu project and resolving all the conflicts with his humility and tolerance. So we should be grateful for what we have been given. If Srila Prabhupada would not have left Vrindavan and taken the trouble to come to America and spread Krishna consciousness, we would have been lost in this material world, suffering and continuing the cycle of birth and death, like we were seeing the Brahma cycle of creation and destruction. We would be continuing in the cycle of birth and death. And Srila Prabhupada, he has left us with his books, which he said were law books for the mankind for the next 10,000 years. So we should read these books and we should also distribute these books to help other suffering souls. As Prabhupada says that Vaishnava is para dukha dukhi. He's unhappy to see other suffering souls. So a Vaishnava, he should be busy preaching Krishna consciousness throughout the world. And Prabhupada writes in the last purport, that last paragraph of the purport that we read today, about these so-called swamis, yogis, karmis, and gyanis, these bogus swamis, sadhus. They are harassing the people because these people, these yogis, karmis, they're not following the process correctly. They're like blind leaders, and people who are blindly following them, what happens when a blind leader leads, blind men follow other blind men, they all fall into a ditch, as Prahlad Maharaj says in one of his verses. नाते विदु स्वार्थ गतिम हि विष्णु दुरास्य ये बहिर अर्थमानिनः अंधा यथांधे रूपनीय मानस के पिशतंत्रे मूर्धामनि बद्धा. That a blind man leads another blind man and they both fall into a ditch. So we should hear from a pure devotee, a devotee who's coming down in the disciplic succession, and Prabhupada mentions the 4 disciplic successions that are authorized. We have Ramanujacharya Sampradaya, which is the Shri Sampradaya. We have Nimbarkacharya Sampradaya, which is the Kumar, coming from the 4 Kumaras. We have the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is our Sampradaya starting from Brahma. And we have the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya, Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, which is Vallabhacharya or Rudra Sampradaya. So these are the 4 authorized Sampradayas. And before we hear anyone, we should ask, like, we should check which disciplic succession that they come from. And it's mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam what is the qualification of a guru, who's qualified to speak this philosophy, and who should we hear. There's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, Tasmad Gurum Prapadyate Jignasu Shriyottamam Shabda Parecha Nishnatam Brahmani Upashamashrayam. That we should hear from someone, we should take them as a guru who understands the conclusion of the Shastras, who have learned the Shastras from another guru who falls in a disciplic succession, who's practicing the teachings in his life, and who's preaching the Shastras as it is. So these are the qualifications of a guru. And before we hear from anyone, we should ask what is the disciplic succession for this person, and who was his guru, and who was the guru of his guru, like that. So we should ask. And I will end with this one thing about hearing, is when somebody comes to you and says, I have something to talk to you or something to tell you, you should ask these three questions before you hear from that person. So you should ask first, is this information that you are trying to tell me beneficial for my Krishna consciousness? Would this information take me closer to Krishna? If the answer is no, then we should not hear from that person. And second question we should ask is, what is the source of this information? Where have you heard it from? Is it a bona fide source? Is it from scriptures? Is it from a bona fide guru? If no, the answer is no, then you should not hear it. Then the third question you should ask is this glorifying others or is it criticizing others? So if it is a criticism of others, then we should not hear it. So if we follow these three things, then we would be hearing pure Harikatha all the time and our heart will be transformed. We will be getting closer to Krishna. So that's all I had prepared for today. If anybody has any questions or comments, they can ask. Thank you. Hari Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hari Krishna Prabhuji.
So the example you gave of Giriraj Swami, was very exemplary. Um, you know, very few devotees we meet, have that kind of tolerance. So any further points or elaboration? How do we develop that kind of tolerance level in our lives?
Yes, Prabhuji, we should always think that through that devotee or through that person, Krishna is trying to teach me something. He's trying to purify me. And whatever is happening to me is because of my own karma. And the other person is but an instrument of my karma. So if he's saying something bad to me, or is doing something wrong to me, then that's my karma. I need to tolerate that. And in this process, I need to learn what is the lesson for me. And if somebody criticizes me, this is actually good. We should be, because it makes us humble. If everybody is glorifying us all the time and not pointing any mistakes of us, right, then we will become proud. So it is good that we are surrounded by someone who criticizes us, and it makes us humble. So eventually everything, every situation we should see that Krishna is there and he's planning that situation for us. So it's not arbitrary that that thing has happened. Krishna has planned it, and that person was an instrument of Krishna's plan. So if we remember that, then we tolerate the problems that other people give to us.
Thank you, Mataji. Agree there. You know, it's very well, not easy, but it's we try to apply that most of the time. Well, I try to apply that most of the times when interfacing with people outside the family. Um, when within our in conversation with our family members, you tend to forget that, and I personally take it a lot for granted, and it becomes really hard to apply.
Yes.
But we'll work towards it.
Yes, Prabhuji. So the thing is that we are in the process. We are not a pure devotee yet. We are in the process of becoming a pure devotee. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the qualities of devotees are mentioned. That the devotee is titikshava karunika surida sarvadehina majat shatrava shanta sadhava sadhubhushanam. Devotee is tolerant, he's merciful, friendly to all living entities, like that. So that's the place where we want to get to, and we are in the process of getting to that place. We should first realize that what we are doing is wrong, something that we did wrong. We should regret about it, and we should keep that in mind, and we should pray to Krishna that next time that situation arises, I don't react so violently. I respond, I become calm, I become sthita pragya. So we should pray to Krishna, but we should realize that we don't have that. So we'll become, alert to those situations. And as we keep on hearing Hari Katha, we'll become purified automatically. And that's the reason we should be hearing all the time, or chanting Hari Krishna mantra all the time, so that we keep remembering these instructions from Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. How should we be responding? Ultimately, we will get to that state by Krishna's mercy.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right, so if you don't have anything else, we'll stop here. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you, Sugandha.
Wonderful
Hare
class.
Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mataji.
Mataji.
Thank
Nice
you,
class.
Mataji.
Very nice class.
Thank you, Mataji.